On the narrow street, Rita Cafe is resisting the forced demolition order. Banners are hung everywhere, vehemently opposing the compulsory teardown, signaling an impending silent confrontation. Inside the cafe, preparations for an espresso begin. The pre-warmed ceramic cup is placed beside the coffee machine, a familiar ritual for those who cherish perfection. The skilled barista selects a 7:3 ratio of Arabica to Robusta beans, roasted dark to produce a strong, rich flavor. Each drop of coffee slowly drips into the ceramic cup, dense and reverent. A ristretto is taking shape. A smooth crema layer rises to the surface, golden and shimmering, a testament to the essence of the entire process. Only connoisseurs understand the value behind that light foam. When the ristretto is complete, Taeha sits at the table, smiling with satisfaction. Amid the rising aroma, he raises the cup, ready to face the upcoming plans in Chungju, which is on the brink of upheaval. In the pure white light, Yoon lifts the small coffee cup to her lips, her expression calm but cautious. Without a word, she slowly sips the coffee, a gentle yet decisive motion. The thick espresso flavor touches her tongue. She holds the moment before swallowing, her expression unchanged. In an instant, the group reacts strongly. Sari and the others simultaneously exclaim at the bitterness and heat, while Taeha remains calm, watching. Gray frowns, clutching his throat, while Sari narrows her eyes, accusing Taeha of trying to poison them. Unfazed, Taeha replies softly that he usually takes a sip before work as an energy boost, and eventually, everyone gets used to it. Gray grimaces at the harsh bitterness of the coffee. Though unaccustomed to the taste, he holds back, complaining quietly while Yoon silently observes beside. Taeha tilts his head innocently, calmly responding to the group's uproar. He didn't add sugar, simply because no one asked. Yoon frowns, her tone sharp. She raises her hand to call the waiter, deciding to skip the bitter coffee and switch to a colder drink. Taeha cannot hide his frustration. His serious expression as Yoon intends to order an iced Americano suddenly makes the round table atmosphere awkward. The quiet alley behind the cafe contrasts sharply with the heated debate inside, an unusual calm before the next upheaval. The atmosphere softens in the room as Gray changes the subject, asking about the negotiation status with Oseong. All eyes turn to Taeha, awaiting the response from the leader. With sharp eyes and a serious expression, Taeha weighs the profound consequences of the new agreement, his gaze unwavering, but doubt stirring within. In the power-dense cigar lounge, where covert deals take place, Yeopil Kim has agreed to all the terms in Oseong's initial proposal. According to the agreement, residents forced to relocate will be allowed to live free of charge in new apartments. Once construction is complete, no additional fees during the building period. However, all future real estate transactions must go through a company designated by Oseong, and half of the profits, calculated from the original value, will belong to them, according to the underground law. Although the initial terms seem lenient, Taeha realizes everything is going too smoothly, and that always comes at a price. Yoon the second-generation leader of the Yabari gang, is stunned to learn the real condition. She must relinquish her leadership, a move too deep, too dangerous. Facing Yoon Taeha coldly confirmed the final condition in the negotiation has been presented. In the shadowy cigar lounge, Taeha appears as a silent but calculating intermediary. When the name Yoon is mentioned, Taeha's eyes flash with surprise and caution. The cigar-smoking man smiles slyly, alluding to rumors about Yoon fighting method and posing a probing question. Though unclear on the details, Taeha acknowledges that the girl once trained under someone before suddenly disappearing. The negotiator pushes his drink forward, presenting a new condition, transferring leadership of the Yabari gang to Lee Haejeong, revealing a deeper scheme beyond a simple contract. Taeha tilts his head, eyes serious, as he asks the person opposite if it would be too bold to know the reason behind the power transfer request. The bespectacled man doesn't hesitate to answer, saying the official reason is that contacting Haejeong Lee would be easier for Oseong. But then he lowers his voice to reveal the real reason, a precaution, because in Korea only one person uses that kind of weapon like Yoon. At the cafe, Lee Haejeong questions his counterpart with sharp eyes. So, who is it? How renowned is the person who trained? Yoon sits upright, her gaze fixed on Taeha. She admits she doesn't know the identity of the teacher, but her father reacted strongly when a mysterious recruiter appeared. She recalls her father's words about the most elite group in the scene, a group she was invited to join. The story seems to have only just begun. Taeha candidly admits his reason for joining. The attractive compensation was all he needed to make his decision. He pauses, shifting the conversation with hesitation, as if about to reveal something important. In front of everyone, Taeha seriously proposes Yabari should be placed under Oseong's management to stabilize the future. The proposal shocks the group. Gray and the female teammate widen their eyes in disbelief at what they just heard. Taeha tries to reassure them, citing Yeopil Kim's agreement and explaining Oseong's nominal role. Contrary to Taeha's persuasion, Yoon remains silent. She stands up, her eyes icy cold, ready to act. Yoon abruptly stands, firmly rejecting the proposal. For her, submitting under Oseong is unacceptable, not just for honor, but because because of the deep-seated hatred stemming from her father's past. Taeha calmly responds, his gaze resolute. He emphasizes that this is the only path to save her critically ill father. The image of the hospital appeared, where Yoon Sori's father still lies motionless. The danger becomes clear. If Chungu discovers Hong In-jae is missing, his life will be the first threat. But Sori reacts sharply. Her heart refuses to accept bowing to the enemy who once devastated her family. A voice breaks the tense atmosphere from behind. A man enters, his shoes clicking steadily. He says, "Follow his advice, leader." A group of men enter, heavily bandaged but serious-faced. Their representative states clearly, "I believe submitting to Haejeong might be the wisest choice right now." Yoon Sori glares, sharply opposing the alliance proposal with Haejeong, the organization that crippled her father. Her hatred remains intact. The young man replies calmly, his eyes determined. He asserts this is the only way to save her father. He stresses the urgency. Sori's father remains hospitalized in Chungu, and his life will be the first threatened once they find out Hong In-jae is gone. Sori screams in despair, emotions surging as reason and family clash. She refuses to submit but cannot afford to lose anyone else. A teammate speaks up, his decisive footsteps echoing on the floor. He suggests following the plan for the survival of the entire area. A man with a bandaged arm steps forward, representing the voice of the people. He looks directly at Sori and states clearly, Haejeong is the only place left to rely on. Yoon Sori recounts that although she knows her father, Mr. Jae-sub, is still alive in the Chungu hospital, no one dares to act recklessly, fearing for his safety. In a memory-tinged flashback, Jae-sub smiles defiantly, accepting the fight even at the risk of sacrifice, but earnestly asking someone to take care of his daughter. A man with a bandaged arm stands before the group, affirming that the woman they call boss is the reason the neighborhood has become strong and safe today. The entire group bows deeply in gratitude. The pink-haired girl standing beside Taeha silently receives their thanks under the slanting light of dusk. Back in the empty room, Yoon Sori stands silently under dim lighting. A voice echoes, reminding her she has too much to lose if she betrays their trust. Her eyes well with tears. No matter how strong she is, the memories and choices before her stir emotions she cannot suppress. Yoon Sori gently bows her head, hiding her reddened eyes beneath the brim of her hat, trying to conceal her rising emotions. Yet her soft reproach toward her stubborn father remains full of love. She lifts her head, smiling brightly after tears have yet to dry. Though her heart remains heavy, Sori leads the spirit, suggesting everyone go for a drink after the storm. The atmosphere in the room suddenly warms. The group leaves together, laughter echoing. They choose Baman, the place where many memories began to end a long day. In the fiery sunset filtering through the curtains, Taeha sits silently amid the bustling scene, his eyes distant yet sparkling with determination. A mysterious hand places a plate bearing In-jae Hong's fingerprint on the table. The game has shifted. The leadership meeting door now stands without barrier. In the glowing orange light, Taeha smiles cold. The battle is not over, it has only just begun. With the cards ready, he silently tells Chung, "Now it's my turn to win." The car sped through the glass tunnel, the man's voice rising with worry as he hunted for any trace of In-jae Hong. Director Pyodo Jang, loyal to the vice chairman, anxiously pressed for information over the phone, his unease clearly etched on his face. At headquarters, the PR and HR departments were frantically searching, but all efforts amounted to nothing. The man stepped past the fallen lions, a chilling scene confirming that In-jae Hong had completely vanished. Pyodo Jang was stunned by the news. The execution of the two lions was a silent declaration of war. Haejeong sent a warning. In-jae Hong had initiated redevelopment plans, and the conspiracy had advanced further than they had anticipated. Information about Chungu violating the ceasefire agreement led Haejeong to officially claim redevelopment rights for Zone 3. Pyodo Jang was left speechless by the unexpected turn of events. In a moment of shock, Pyodo tried to make sense of what had happened to Hong In-jae, who had once been elevated to director by Chung Jin. Doubts arose in Pyodo's mind. Had Hong In-jae been eliminated, and if so, who had replaced him? A voice echoed from the car screen. Vice Chairman Gwang Hoo-young personally called Pyodo's name, pulling him back to the high-pressure reality. Gwang Hoo-young, vice chairman of Chungu Group, slowly questioned Pyodo about the identity of Hong's power successor. At Chungu's Uedo office complex, the power chessboard was being rearranged, revealing the heart of the conspiracy in daylight. Severely wounded, In-jae Hong weakly revealed the council meeting location on the 60th floor, struggling to stay conscious amid the bloodstains on his shirt. Taeha approached with a cold demeanor, confirming the council's 15-member structure, as if already holding the entire situation in his grasp. In-jae clenched his teeth in silence, his face contorted in pain, hesitating between resistance and acceptance. A blade swept close to his face, causing In-jae to panic and shout, hastily confirming Taeha's words as true. Taeha gave a faint smile, emphasizing he didn't need information, but was merely verifying what he already knew, like a cold sentence read slowly. Trembling in confusion, Injayu looked up and uttered a final desperate question. So, what exactly do you want from me? Taeha coldly turned his back and walked away, leaving Injayu Hong kneeling in the ruined room. I want nothing. The reply stunned the director. Taeha's icy gaze seemed to strip away the truth. Even if Injayu survived and returned to the power struggle, death was inevitable once Jin knew of his betrayal. Injayu's panic face revealed utter despair. He was now a fallen man, abandoned by the very person who once supported, with death looming near. Taeha walked away leisurely, delivering a final cutting remark. Think carefully about why I shouldn't kill you. Taeha left the abandoned building, leaving behind the heavy shadow of defeat. Each step was the decisiveness of one who already held victory. Taeha's gaze faltered upon seeing the person opposite him. The question slipped out instinctively, cold yet composed. Are you planning to leave? Gray, Yoonsori, Lee Haejeong, and another member suddenly appeared, blocking Taeha's path. Yoonsori's half-joking, half-warning remark shifted the tense atmosphere into an unpredictable chill. Taeha maintained a confident smile as he turned to respond. He knew well that although Injayu Hong was useless, the titled director remained a valuable card in the reconstruction battle. With eyes sharp as knives, Taeha asserted that if Injayu's existence became troublesome, he was ready to eliminate him immediately without warning. Just as Taeha turned away, Gray stepped forward, facing him in silence. An invisible tension ignited between them, as if a battle was about to erupt. Gray broke the silence with a decisive question, recalling a promise Taeha had made. It was not just a reminder, but a demand for honor. Taeha stood silently in the shadow, eyes fixed on Gray. His low voice revealed for the first time his true goal, to bring Gray into the battlefield. Taeha patted Gray's shoulder, leaving a warning. Stay safe, Chungu definitely won't let this go. Lee Haejeong and Sari saw him off with sincere looks. Goodbye, and thank you for everything. Taeha gave a slight smile, replying with rare calmness. Glad to help. See you again. The clear blue sky opened ahead, the place where Taeha's new journey awaited, with upcoming upheavals. On the runway, Chungu members began discussing who would replace Director Hong. The game was far from over. A seemingly harmless question, "You're smoking again," evoked a gloomy sense that tensions were far from cooling down. On the quiet runway, two men walked side by side in the early morning light. One side, envious of the other's freedom, while the other quietly said he talked too much. Sunyeok Haejeong, a senior bodyguard of Chungu, chewed gum while muttering his frustration. He recalled his ignored request for a raise, and now could only joke as he blew bubbles. Sunyeok Haejeong turned to ask a colleague about the chances of supporting the vice chairman in the vote. His relaxed expression masked a genuine concern about internal affairs. Another Chungu employee, panicked, urged the person opposite to keep their promise. His fearful face reflected helplessness in a power game beyond his control. Yeoman Mun, also a senior bodyguard, calmly smoked and replied simply, "Just follow the captain." His words were both comforting and binding, like an invisible command. The power struggle between the two factions was clearer than ever. Jin, young and ambitious, faced off against the seasoned vice chairman. Jin was confident with 7 votes in hand, but unaware of what awaited ahead. Sunyeok Haejeong smirked slightly, understanding the influence of the person Hong Injayu had chosen as representative. If it was indeed him, all decisions would depend on the two remaining neutral members. The airplane's wheels screeched upon landing, signaling the decisive moment was near, the arrival of someone who, without doing anything yet, already held the fate in their hands. The eyes of the two bodyguards followed the plane, openly acknowledging that the person stepping down would hold Chungu's future. The plane came to a complete stop, sunlight illuminating the scene. Chungu security, the force guarding the boundaries of power, was ready for major upheaval. The airplane door opened slightly, and the rules were reiterated. Chungu staff must obey Junsu Beak alone and avoid involvement in business matters. Footsteps echoed on the airplane stair. An exception was about to appear, an individual possessing intelligence, power, and vision, about to join Chungu's board of directors. Dujong Han, the official successor of Junsu Beak, stepped down from the private jet amid admiring gazes. With outstanding charisma and a renowned reputation, he was the symbol that all Chungu security forces looked up to. Dujong Han's cold eyes scanned the runway, scrutinizing those waiting for him. His dignity seemed to freeze the very atmosphere. Sunyeok and Yeoman, two senior bodyguards, bowed their heads in greeting, an expression of absolute respect for the representative holding power on behalf of Director Hong. Chungu's guards stood at attention, lined up in saluting. Dujong Han's arrival was not just an assumption of role, it was a declaration of absolute authority. At the same time, amid the shimmering waters of South Korea, an isolated yacht drifted. Another force was preparing to enter the power game. On the boat's deck, a woman covered in scars stepped out. She faced a seated man, her tone gentle but guarded, signaling a meeting far from simple. Jin Chung coldly dismissed formalities, saying anyone with business should come on their own, no need for pleasant. On the ship's deck, a giant marlin hung suspended, the spear marks still visible on its body, a testament to the strength of its captain. Haejeong appeared, her scarred body walking confidently between sea and sky. Her smile was both alluring and dangerous. The girl from the Yeon Changju lineage, the heir of the family that founded the Supreme Council, stepped onto the deck, her expression calm and authoritative. The balance of power within Changgu was maintained through faction representatives, and Haejeong held a key role in oversight. Haejeong, a neutral member of Changgu's council, belonged to an all-female secret organization rumored to possess power rivaling the top warriors of Oseon. The young man smiled polite but with meaningful eyes, tactfully declining Haejeong's invitation before quickly shifting to the main topic, the situation involving In Jae-han. Haejeong remained composed, gently responding to the reminder, but her eyes revealed she was trying to hide a rising unease. She mentioned a name thought to be forgot, Sunyeok Jin, a name everyone knew but never expected to hear again. A horrifying truth emerged. Sunyeok Jin, the third son of the late chairman Seoko Jin, had died 17 years ago. How could someone deceased become a representative? Not a ghost but a survivor like a monster. He clenched his chest in rage as he spoke the name that had turned his life into living hell. With a dangerous smile, he officially demanded the council issue a manhunt order. The reward, 20 billion won for the head of the man who murdered his family, Sunyeok Jin. 17 years ago, under the clear blue sky, the fateful turning point of the Jin family quietly began to unfold. Gyuho Jin, the eldest son of Chairman Seoko Jin, rushed desperately, trying to hold his father back amid anger and chaos. In the cold garage, Gyuho shouted in fury, questioning Seoko about Sunyeok's true identity, the mysterious son who shook the entire clan. Seoko Jin turned around, his gaze icy cold, challenging his children with absolute authority. He needed no one's permission. Seoko's contemptuous look rendered all pleas meaningless. He stepped into the car, ignoring the urgent calls behind him. 2 cars silently rolled away into the night. Gyuho sighed bitterly, muttering, his father was truly uncontrollable. Inside the quiet car, Sunyeok Jin frowned in dissatisfaction, blaming his father for being so reckless, inconsiderate of his companions, and fearing scolding from his eldest brother. The woman beside him smiled soothingly, advising Sunyeok not to worry, then suggested buying a painting to calm Gyuho Jin's heart. A boy peeked out the car window, his youthful voice interjecting. Taeha Jin, only 10 years old at the time, worried that Gyuho might misunderstand and become even angrier. The gate slowly opened. Sunyeok sighed inwardly, blaming his father for failing to keep his world travels secret, putting the family in an awkward position. As the car entered the yard, 2 shadows silently lurked on either side of the wall, a hidden threat quietly approaching. Taeha suddenly saw something through the window, his eyes horrified by a scene that would haunt him forever. Both rows of people bowed deeply to the ground, respectfully bidding farewell to Chairman Jin, loudly chanting wishes for his safe return. Sitting in the car, Seoko Jin frowned and sighed, instructing his subordinates to maintain the company firmly and absolutely avoid rash actions during his absence. Gyuho Jin angrily looked at the people bowing, feeling their flattery was despicable and unacceptable. Sunyeok Jin smiled sarcastically, admitting that they no longer tried to hide their biased loyalty. He turned to Taeha, seriously instructing the boy to remember this scene as an important lesson about human nature and power. Sunyeok's gaze darkened as he spoke of the past. Those people had once been saved by Taeha's grandfather, and now their loyalty was not out of duty, but because of the old leadership glory. Taeha listened intently as his brother mentioned the oath of loyalty. Some had voluntarily bowed before his grandfather, pledging lifelong allegiance. Those people were called the Loyalist faction, a covert but solid force. His brother affirmed they would become a strong support for Taeha in the future. The scene shifted to a humble neighborhood under the sunset, where the bustling crowd quietly flowed among brightly lit signs. A young man walked silently through the crowd, calm in appearance but with eyes full of worries, as if searching for something. Yongin City, Gyeonggi Province. The setting changed, revealing the place where the next moves in the power game would unfold. Taeha stopped. The words Loyalist faction echoed in his mind. He wondered, do they still exist in Chunggu or have vanished with the old era? Taeha knelt on the floor, his gaze thoughtful as he recalled those who once swore loyalty to his grandfather. He was searching for a glimmer of hope from the past. Gray began checking old data left by his father, hoping to find any trustworthy names in the remaining files. He asked Taeha if he could remember anyone. The question made Taeha hesitate. He paced around the room filled with equipment, repeating in his mind, not here, still can't find. Surprised by Gray's memory, Taeha couldn't hide his curiosity, but Gray just shrugged. Fewer than 20 people, but their names were still vividly recorded. Gray continued typing relentlessly, then looked up with disappointment. Despite searching everywhere, the result was 0. Taeha went silent, leaning back, a gloomy question echoing in his mind. I anticipated this, but really, no one left. Those who had been absolutely loyal to his grandfather had gradually disappeared. It was understandable, since Gyuho Jin wouldn't let them survive. Suddenly, the silver-haired hacker discovered a name still in the system, though the person had long retired. The record showed that person currently owned a small bar in Yongin, Gyeonggi Province. A glimmer of hope sparked. Taeha followed the address, stepping into the bar at sunset. The peaceful atmosphere contrasted with his purpose for coming. The bar owner greeted him with a warm smile, unaware of the true identity of the strange visitor. Taeha sat down, his tone calm but eyes probing. He began with a seemingly harmless question. What's the best dish here? The chef smiled brightly, confidently declaring that every dish here was a masterpiece. He suggested trying the mackerel that had just arrived this morning. Taeha smiled, sat at the bar, and ordered a single portion. He also asked about the accompanying drink. The young man quietly replied that he would decide after tasting the dish. His eyes radiated calmness but were watchful. The chef hesitated slightly, his face showing a hint of surprise. The atmosphere in the bar suddenly grew tense. He firmly placed the fish on the cutting board, the sharp sound echoing cold. The gesture seemed to signal something beyond an ordinary meal. Taeha watched the raised blade without blink. Between them, the meal had turned into a silent challenge. Taeha sat quietly, his gaze fixed on the man before him. He asked directly, Owner, when will Mr. Gwangsu-gu arrive? The man smiled kindly, surprised, and asked back, Gwangsu-gu, if you're looking for the owner, that's me. Taeha leaned forward, his eyes cold. Not you. The man froze. What did you say? With a cold smile, Taeha bowed his head. I'm no expert on raw fish, but I know the knife you're holding isn't meant for slicing fish. Taeha lifted his shirt, revealing the knife handle hidden on his person. At least, you should hide it more convincingly. The clash of metal rang out. The man immediately drew his knife to attack, but Taeha reacted in time, locking the blade with his own weapon. The confrontation officially began. Taeha's blade suddenly cracked upon contact with the enemy's weapon, producing a piercing sound in the silent room. He froze, unable to believe his sharp blade, which he trusted, had just snapped in an instant. Amid the tension, an older man pushed open the door and entered, grumbling casually, unaware of the ongoing confrontation. He was stunned to witness Taeha dodging a lethal strike while the chef was ready to strike again. The fake chef panicked, signaling the owner to flee, shouting that the man before them was a dangerous intruder. The old man's face briefly changed color. In his eyes, old memories flooded back, recognizing the man not as an enemy, but as a descendant of someone he once swore loyalty to. He smiled, his calm voice breaking the long silence, a greeting to someone once familiar. In childhood memories, the boy had heard his father mention those absolutely loyal to their family. The bodyguard named Gwangu was also one of them, a silent protector of the child who had now grown up. Humble as he was, Gwangu remained faithful to the young master from years ago, valuing that responsibility as a lifelong mission. With sincere eyes and a gentle voice, he only wished to continue serving the heir with all the loyalty he had left. At that moment, tears streamed down Gwangu's face, not from fear, but because the word Mr. had brought him back to his original ideal. Tears fell onto the stone floor, his trembling hands touching down as if cleansing a pain buried too long. Gwangsu bowed deeply to the ground, his voice choked as he called out, Young Master Taeha. In the gentle sunset light, the library space appeared quiet but heavy with unspoken old memory. Gwangsu led Taeha into the office, his heart full of emotion, unable to hide his gratitude for the unimaginable reunion. Gwangsu expressed admiration. The story of the Chenggu raid made him respect even more the boldness of the young master. Taeha looked straight at the bookshelf, his eyes without regret. But in the end, I still failed. Jin Ching is still alive. In the soft afternoon light, the man took off his jacket, asking about the young man who had appeared in the bar with clear interest. He gently replied. The comfortable smile on the young man's face was that of his student, whom he had mentored for 8 years. Taeha stood still in the room, recalling the feeling of the opponent's blade nearly cutting through his weapon without technique. Taeha bowed politely, admitting that his past battles had trained him to be so sharp and precise in assessing weapons. The image of Hyunbin passing through the room flashed in his mind, along with the familiar phrase about the electricity bill, making that moment feel more real than ever. Gwangsu entered the room, his eyes still showing surprise. The attack on Chenggu had been unthinkable, except by the young master standing before him. Taeha frowned at the paper thrown into the trash, a copy of a bill statement discarded without hesitation. He opened his wallet, pulled out the paper to examine it, his eyes briefly showing suspicion and unease. His eyes widened in silence. What he saw made him unable to trust his initial instinct. In the silent space, the sound of the printer echoed. Taeha stood still, holding the report, his mind deeply immersed in thought. Gwangsu-gu, former vice chairman of Chenggu, stood by the window, smiling gently, cautiously asking about the years Taeha had endured. Taeha replied with a cold single word, execution. His eyes gleamed with a barely concealed deadly intent. In the trash bin, Taeha's wanted poster lay mixed with other worthless documents, discarded like forgotten evidence. With a bounty of up to 20 billion won on his head, Taeha whispered, "I've been busy eliminating all the traitors in my family." 17 years ago, Gwangsu was imprisoned in an isolated room, his body covered in wounds, his eyes somber as he faced the impending judgment. The rusty metal door screeched in the darkness, signaling the arrival of a powerful figure. Gyu Jin entered, pulling up a chair in front of Gwangsu, his voice laced with mockery and warning. Sitting upright, Gyu Jin looked down at Gwangsu like a victor, introducing himself as the eldest son of Seok Jin, the successor of Chungu. Gwangsu bowed his head in pain as Gyu mentioned his father's funeral and the Sunyeok family, those who had died in the horrific incident. Gyu coldly announced that they had forged evidence to cover up Gwangsu's involvement, crafting a perfect scenario of a devoted son caring for his sick mother. Furious, Gwangsu sprang up, shouting directly at Gyu Jin, accusing him of orchestrating everything to frame him. He exposed every detail, from the sudden resignation of his mother's caretaker to her mysterious disappearance, all part of a scheme to keep him off the fateful yacht. Gyu calmly retorted, emphasizing the evidence showing Gwangsu was not on the yacht and that Sunyeok's invitation was still on record. Gwangsu's face twisted with inner turmoil as he pressed, questioning whether he was truly wrong to be suspicious. Gyu feigned sympathy, affirming that blaming others was not what he wanted because in dire circumstances, family always comes first. He gently pushed a notebook toward Gwangsu, promising safety for both him and his mother, and commanded, "Write." Gyuho's tone turned icy. He wanted to know which of the old loyalists were still alive and resisting. He knew well that the loyal forces were not just those who had knelt that day. Gyu demanded Gwangsu write down the names of those who would not submit to him. Powerless, Gwangsu sat silently, directing a question toward Junsu, who stood behind Gyu, seeking a final shred of humanity. Junsu responded calmly, stating his sole loyalty was to Chungu, not to any individual. Back in the present, Gwangsu asked in shock whether the young master had truly become a murderer. Taeha did not hesitate to admit it. His eyes gleamed with determination as he declared his sole goal was to punish those who betrayed his family. Gwangsu smiled faintly, his gaze clouded with resignation. He understood that, in Taeha's eyes, he might also be seen as a traitor. He clenched his fists, recalling the decision years ago to resign and avoid boarding the yacht with his former master, Sunyeok. Taeha drew a baton from his coat. His voice was cold, leaving no room for excuses. There is no reason sufficient to forgive a traitor. A pair of eyes appeared in the darkness, sharp and wary. Bare feet silently stepped forward, slow but heavy, as if dragging the aura of death itself. A sudden punch from Gwangsu struck the traitor's face, producing a resounding POW in the air. Taeha froze, his blade shattering in his hand, eyes wide with panic as he realized what had just happened. Gwangsu's face lit up with sarcasm, his voice mocking, "Too bad your blade is no longer sharp." Not losing the initiative, Taeha lunged forward, shedding his coat, ready to counterattack with fiery eyes. The cloak whipped through the air in an instant, causing Gwangsu to hesitate slightly, his gaze tense. Gwangsu's expression turned cold. He countered with a lightning-fast strike, ready to crush the resistance. Taeha charged from above, delivering a kick aimed straight at the enemy. The unexpected blow left the opponent barely able to react in shock. The precise kick stunned the traitor. In his eyes, Taeha appeared as an opponent beyond imagination. Though darkness limited visibility, Taeha skillfully switched from weapons to close combat without hesitation. Taeha's striking rhythm tore through the air. The enemy could only defend passively. Despite relentless attack, Taeha's eyes flickered with shock. A question surfaced in his mind. How much blood has this one shed to become like this? The traitor merely smiled smugly. In the darkness, that smile seemed to challenge fate itself. Suddenly, Gwangsu embraced Taeha tight, grinning broadly as he declared he would not back down no matter how many times he was attacked. The sunset cast long shadows over the quiet room, as if recalling the buried past within. Gwangsu's face briefly darkened in thought when mentioning the name Salerno, a truth gradually coming to light. He recounted the day the yacht was soaked in blood, the deaths of Sunyeok and the chairman, marking the start of a full-scale purge. Gwangsu made it clear, Gyu Jin had killed all the loyalists of the late chairman except for him. When Taeha asked why, Gwangsu calmly replied he was spared to be bait. Gwangsu recounted that at that time, Gyu Jin believed there were still loyalists left within Chungu. Therefore, Gyu Jin spared his life, believing the survivors would soon come to him. However, 17 years have passed, and it seems no one remembers Gwangsu's existence anymore. He smiled, guessing that Taeha was wondering why, among everyone, Gyu Jin chose to spare him. Among the loyalists who were all killed, only he was kept alive, a fact that remains inexplicable to this day. Until he admitted it was Junsu, Taeha's older brother, who intervened to spare him back then. Taeha rummaged through his pocket, recounting that on the day of the yacht incident, he received an item from his grandfather. That item was originally entrusted to lawyer In-soo Kim, but since he betrayed the family, Taeha had to deal with him without mercy. Taeha placed the fountain pen on the table, his eyes sharp as he asked directly, "Do you recognize this?" Gwangsu was stunned, his eyes wide with shock at the object that evoked dark memory. Taeha questioned Gwangsu sternly about the identities of those still loyal to his father. Sitting opposite in the cold interrogation room, each word pressed like a seed. "Even lawyer Kim betrayed us, so how long will you remain loyal?" The silver-haired man disdainfully denied Gwangsu's loyalty, claiming it held no value in the current situation. Those insulting words were immediately met with retaliation as Gwangsu slammed his head into the wall, blood gushing fiercely. The room echoed with repeated wham sound, yet the silver-haired man and the one seated at the table maintained a suspicious calm. The silver-haired man stepped closer, coldly ordering Gwangsu to stop, his tone commanding. Gwangsu, standing in a pool of blood, shouted angrily. He refused to surrender. Why should he abandon his ideals to become a traitor like Gwangsu yelled, his bloodied face. Chunggu was the chairman's dream, the place that saved his life. How could he betray that man? Tears streaming down, Gwangsu painfully affirmed that even in death, he would never betray the chairman, the benefactor who saved his life. He bowed his head, silently recalling an old wound, a symbol of unwavering loyalty through the year. He gave a bitter smile, admitting that after 17 years, that fountain pen was probably forgotten by everyone. But for Taeha, as long as he lived, he would continue to carry out the chairman's will to the very end. Gwangsu looked Taeha straight in the eye, earnestly pleading, "Young master, please become the next chairman of Chunggu." Kim Myung-gi reported that 3 out of 6 commissioners supporting the vice chairman are in a precarious position. He stated that all the department heads under him are veterans, but tensions are escalating as senior leaders refuse to step down. Jung Jin sarcastically blamed the stubborn old men who refused to retire for causing the system to collapse. He ordered a dinner party to be organized to extract information from the department heads, hoping to find each person's weaknesses. At that moment, footsteps echoed, signaling an unexpected arrival that made Chung Jin pause. Chung Jin looked up and gave a polite smile. "Pleasure to see you again, Director." Vice Chairman Gwang-hoo Yang and members of the Board of Directors entered, initiating a meeting full of scheming. With a courteous smile, Gwang-hoo Yang expressed his desire to discuss matters privately, seeking an opportunity to consolidate power. However, Chung Jin appeared busy, coldly declined, and told him to send an email. Chung Jin sneered, mocking the opposing group's age but reminded them they were still capable of writing emails. Gwang-hoo Yang refused to back down, stepped forward, and proposed a brief conversation right then and there. The female bodyguard stepped forward, her cold gaze creating a tense standoff between the two factions. The female bodyguard blocked the way, her stern eyes announcing that, by Mr. Beek's orders, the factions were not allowed to interact before the board meeting. A member of Chung Jin's faction calmly adjusted his glasses, silently thinking that even as vice chairman, he could not defy the directives of the security power holder, Chunggu. In the main hall, Vice Chairman Gwang-hoo Yang faced the female bodyguard direct, striding forward challengingly. The young woman blocked the path, her warning voice ringing out in the silence if he took another step. Her face showed clear tension, sweat dripping from her forehead. She was about to be forced to act. But before she could move, Gwang-hoo Yang growled fiercely like a wild beast. "Step aside." Gwang-hoo Yang's furious eyes blazed, veins twitching as he roared inwardly, refusing to be stopped. Before the fiery anger, the female bodyguard's limbs went weak, cold sweat pouring down, her heart filled with panic. Chung Jin suddenly appeared, stepping close to Gwang-hoo Yang, his cold, overwhelming aura silencing everyone. He glanced at the bodyguard with a crooked smile, mocking, "What kind of bodyguard trembles just from a glare?" Then coldly docked her salary for 3 months. She bowed her head in apology, silent, disappointment clear in her lowered eyes. A nearby employee shuddered, silently thinking that Chung Jin's aura was no less formidable than Mr. Beek. Under the invisible pressure radiating from Gwang-hoo Yang, the entire room seemed shaken. The opponent suddenly understood why he was once untouchable under both the founding chairman and Gyuho Jin. Faint smile appeared on Gwang-hoo Yang's face. That quiet yet sharp aura made those facing him unable to underestimate. Chung Jin turned around, smiling. Gwang-hoo Yang, the man who helped him rise to his current position, now stood before him like a wall. Gwang-hoo Yang calmly reminded, it was Chung Jin who eliminated both the loyal faction and Gyuho Jin, paving the way for him to sit in the chairman's seat after 37 years of waiting. He smirked and changed the subject. The person suspended 3 days ago, the culprit in the Jin family massacre, was the same one who once severed Chung Jin's Achilles tendon. With eyes gleaming with sinister intent, Gwang-hoo Yang showed curiosity. Although that person was wanted dead or alive, if still alive, he wanted to know the real story behind it. Gwang-hoo Yang smiled smugly as he revealed he had sent people to hunt the enemy for a 20 billion won reward, simultaneously challenging his rival to decide his own fate. He turned and left, casting a cold glance back, silently warning that time was running out for the other side. A mocking smile appeared on Taeha's lips as he recalled Gwang-hoo Yang's 37 years of being forgot, full of disdain. In a quiet bar, the conversation shifted to a completely different place, where preparations were underway for a special weapon. The blacksmith was surprised by the request to forge a blade when he heard the other party mention a sword that would never break. The brown-haired young man sitting opposite was thoughtful, his gaze determined. He wanted a sword that could endure everything, not just a weapon, but a symbol of unyielding resolve. The young chef proudly boasted that the knife that nearly broke someone else's blade was his doing, catching the blacksmith's attention. The blacksmith sternly dismissed this, warning his junior that being good at sharpening knives doesn't mean being good at forging them, then told him to focus on cutting fish properly. Finally, the blacksmith turned to ask Taeha if this request was related to someone named Junsu. Taeha nodded in confirmation. It was the very person who broke the blade with bare hands that made him decide to return to forging weapons. Taeha recalled, despite all his experiences in the trade, he had never seen anyone break a blade so easily. The blacksmith suddenly changed the subject, mentioning Taeha's use of his father's name as a proxy in the upcoming shareholders' meeting, a move that shocked the executive circle. Taeha smiled coldly, calculating that if Gwang-hoo Yang was still the same, he would surely cause Ching trouble due to his bottomless greed, something even Taeha's grandfather once feared. The man wearing glasses stared intently, realizing that if Taeha joined the meeting amid the power struggle, he could turn the tide as a living testament. Images of Ching Jin and the coup flashed before him. If exposed, Ching would not only lose his board seat but also his chance at the chairmanship. Taeha reached out to take the knife, affirming that no matter what happens, he must confront Junsu Beek. In the cold smoke, Taeha's eyes were sharp as a blade. Before him stood Junsu Beek, the head of Chinggu's security forces. The blacksmith poured wine, his gaze full of contemplation. The game of power, blood, and steel had begun to move. As the glass touched his lips, Gwangsu-gu couldn't hide his solemn expression. He asked bluntly, "When you face him, do you think you'll win?" The young man answered calmly. For him, it was no longer about winning or losing. It was a duty, a debt to be repaid with honor. With eyes burning through the smoke, Taeha swore, "Anyone who betrays his family will die. One by one, no one will be spared." Those words left the chef at the counter silent for a moment. His expression seemed to carry both fear and respect. Taeha recalled the foes he had faced, monsters with strength beyond human limits, but Junsu Beek was something different. Setting down his chopsticks, Gwangsu-gu loudly accepted the challenge. He, a loyalist of the neutral faction, would forge a sword that would silence even Junsu Beek. After the discussion, Taeha stood, politely bowed to thank Gwangsu-gu, and instructed him to contact him once the blade was finished. Taeha stepped out of the bar, harsh sunlight shining down on his cold figure striding through the street. A young man wearing a baseball cap peered from afar, his eyes lighting up upon seeing Taeha. Noticing the gaze from across, Taeha stopped, his eyes cold and silent as he observed the approaching figure. The stranger smiled confident, nomming Taeha as the one wanted with a 20 billion won bounty, and demanded come with. Taeha furrowed his brow, silently guessing the identity of the man opposite. Unexpectedly, less than a day after the new warrant was issued, a bounty hunter had already come knocking. Just as Taeha began to question him, he suddenly sensed a deadly aura sweeping past, his eyes wide with alarm. From above, a man in red swung a bat, smashing directly into a billboard, sending Taeha flying. The consecutive impact shattered the billboard, creating a series of loud explosions in the street. The two attackers revealed themselves, the batter and pitcher of the Dobeng gang, chatting casually as if playing baseball. The large man wearing sunglasses claimed that Taeha had redirected the collision force to lessen his injury. Amid the cloud of debris, Taeha stood up. Though his shirt was torn, his gaze remained unchanged, cold and steely. Gwangsu-gu was startled by the loud noise outside, his eyes showing confusion and alertness. At the moment he called out, "Young master," an unexpected and dangerous event struck, tightening his chest. Gwangsu-gu's eyes widened, cold sweat pouring, as he realized the terrible event that had just occurred. Lee Haejeong smiled sinisterly, coldly emphasizing that time was less important than the steadfastness maintained over 37 years. While Gwangsu was still recovering, the man who once played the chef silently approached from behind, hiding deadly intent in the shadow. The cold-blooded assassin cracked his knuckles, declaring that his preparations had been meticulously planned with moles everywhere. He revealed himself as the #1 assassin who had feigned ignorance for years, all to seize the right to succeed Junsu Beek.